Hey folks, I'm Dennis. Thanks for watching my video. Today I'm going to start on a garden arbor or a wedding arbor, garden trellis. Some people call it different things. The difference in the one that I'm going to build is that I'm going to build this one in such a way that it can be taken down fairly easily. I'm going to build it in 3 parts so that if you want to build one like for wedding venues, for example, you could take it apart, transport it to where you need it, put it together. Since I'm using construction grade lumber, I don't want the stamps and the stencils that are on the wood to show through the stain. If you're going to paint it, it might not matter. So I'm going to run all my wood through the planer first. If you don't have a planer, you could do the same thing basically with a sander. Go through and sand all the wood and get the stencils off. That way if you are going to stain it, you don't have to worry about those showing through. Let's get started. So I've got my 7-foot upright. This is one of them. Of course there's 4 because I've got 2 on each end, right? And I cut a piece at 17 inches and then cut a mitered piece that's 24 inches point to point. So that'll be the support. It's going to go together like so. I'm going to attach this flush and then the mitered piece will go in just like so. So I'm going to put a couple of pocket holes in the inside face of the 17-inch board to attach to the upright. Since this is 2x4 lumber, I've got everything set to 1.5 inches, and I'll use the A and the C hole in my jig. Now when I'm doing the pocket holes for a miter like this on a 2x4, they say you can, Craig says you can use the A and the C hole and still get inside of the foot and get the toe without coming out here. I have a hard time doing that, so I'm going to use the A hole and the B hole and try to get them about center. I also reduce the depth a little bit on the block. I'll leave my bit set at 1.5, but I cut the depth down to, or the thickness down to 1 3/8 on my guide block. Basically I set it up in the jig so that the back side of the B hole is below the top of the board. It's not ideal doing a miter, but you know, it's alright. So I'm just going to clamp it. I'm going to use 2.5-inch Craig screws. Clamp this end. I just took a piece of scrap and I cut a 90-degree notch out of it. Stick that right there. Gives me a good clamping surface. So now we got the basis of the leg. So you have 2, one on this side, one on that side. We'll form up the vertical supports with those. So you need to make 4 of these. Be mindful of which side your pocket holes are on, because you want, the 2 in the, well, depends on how you want to do it. You may want to put them all on the same side so that all the pocket holes are facing away from what you know is going to be the front of the arbor. But if it maybe used both sides or something, then just put them all to the inside so they won't be as visible. I cut 6 pieces of 2x4 to 24 inches because I'm going to use those for spacers on the legs that I made. So I'm going to put a 24-inch brace here. I'm going to clamp them together, put 2 screws into each end. I'll drill and countersink the holes out here. Then I'll put the second brace right here, same way. Drill and countersink 2 holes in each end, and I'm putting 2.5-inch screws into each end of each one of these braces. Then I took 2 of the 2x6s that I planed down and I cut them, cross-cut them to 40 inches long. I'm going to use them to make the feet that go on each side of the vertical legs. And then I just made up a template for the pattern I want on the end of the feet, just to scroll them off and make them smooth. And then cut that on the scroll saw. You could use a jigsaw, anything you want. You don't have to have a scroll pattern. You could do just a miter. You could just cut the edge off. You could do it flat or square rather, whatever you wanted to do. But that's just how I'm going to do mine. So I'll just take my template, line it up on the end, and then trace a pattern. And then I'll just cut that off on the scroll saw. Do that on each end of all 4 of these. Then I'll just sand each one of these off as I do them, and they'll be ready to go. Then I'm going to take one of the feet and put it under the boards, and I'm going to take another 2x4 by 24 inch piece and put it right in here, and I want it to be at the top of this foot piece, so that when the arbor's finished, there's not a hole dropping down in there for garbage and other junk to fall in there, but the 2x4 spacer board is on top, flush with the top of the feet. So you can see I've got it clamped in where I've got the 1 foot board flush with the bottom of the legs, and then I've got this 2x4 spacer flush with the top of that footboard. And that way when I put the other footboard on, it's going to have that gap between the 2 legs sealed up. So now I've got this foot side of the feet, pair attached with put 2 screws here, 2 screws here, and 2 here and here. And then I'll flip the whole thing over and attach the other side, the other foot on the other side, and then that whole leg assembly will be done except for finishing. I'm taking 2 2x6s, and now my arbor is going to be 7 feet tall and 7 feet wide. So I've cut these 2x6s after I've planed them to 7 feet long. Again, you can do any end treatment you want. I'm going to do mine in sort of a scroll, an OG, whatever you want to call that. So I'm just going to trace that off and then cut it with my jigsaw. This is what it'll look like when it's done. I measured the outer distance on the vertical sections, the leg sections that I've already assembled, and they measure 26 and 15/16. So I cut my 2x4 spacer boards to 27. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 4 of them down through here. These are upside down from the way I'm going to install them on the arbor. I'm just using a flat surface, in this case my table saw, and I'm going to attach 4 of them down through here. I'm going to put, measuring from the outer end, I'm going to put one at 6.5 from each end, and then I'm going to go in 2'6", and I'm going to do the same thing from the other end, and that pretty much spaces them evenly down the length of the horizontal pieces. And you could do it any number of ways. You could put Craig screws or pocket holes in here if you wanted to. I'm just putting 2 screws from the outside on each end of each 2x4. And that's how it'll look flipped over in the proper orientation. Now the reason that I measured 6.5 inches in from the end is because that's where I want the top of my vertical members to hit. I want this brace to set on top of the brace between the 2 legs, and that way it's easier to line everything up. That'll give me enough overhang to look decent here. So when I dry fit the legs into the bottom of the top section with the 2x4 cross brace on the leg section mated up to this 2x4 over here, I made a mark where the end of my top section was. And then I just took another straight piece of 2x that I had, and I'm going to use that as a reference. And then I cut some 6-inch blocks of 2x2. You could use 1x or whatever, and I'm just going to use that as an additional alignment tool when I go to put it together out in the field. And then I'm going to put the end of this block as a reference for the end of the leg section. That way it'll just be easier to line everything up and get the takedown bolts or the knockdown bolts lined up right and through there. Plus it'll make it a little more stable before it's all bolted together. I'm just using this board as an alignment tool for this block because I want the bottom of this block to be flush with the bottom of these 2x4 braces. And I'm just going to put a couple of 2-inch screws in each block. And I did that on all 4 corners. I feel better about putting my knockdown bolts locations with the thing assembled and standing upright. You could do it with it laying down like this. I think it'd be fine. Put it all together and clamp it. I don't know why, I just think I'd feel better doing it with it standing up. So I'm just going to put it together here. I'm going to fit it, make sure everything's up against the blocks, put a big clamp there, and that can stand the whole thing up. So essentially that's it with just kind of dry fit. So the unique thing about this particular arbor design, and the reason I'm making this video, is because I'm making this thing to be knocked down. In other words, you can put it together and take it apart. Otherwise, it's no different than any other arbor. You would just, build it, screw everything together on site, and it'd be fine. So what I'm doing is I'm using these little inserts and these knockdown screws, and I got them online. You can just go online and look up knockdown hardware, knockdown screws, whatever. You can buy them different lengths. They usually have a hex head, which these do. These inserts, they're knockdown inserts is what they are. They've got external threads for threading them into the piece of wood that's going to receive the knockdown screw, and then they've got internal threads to receive the screw. And they've also got a hex bore in the entry end, so you can insert them using a hex key. And then, of course, the way they work is the knockdown bolt screws in like that. So in order to use these, what I've done is, and the reason that I built these vertical sections the way I have, is so that I've got these cross braces. And what I want to do is I want to have 2 knockdown bolts in each one of these to prevent the arbor from swaying back and forth this way. That ought to make it plenty steady. And then I'm also going to put 2 in through here on each side to give a little bit more stability, just to kind of make sure it's good and solid when it's put together. I took the depth of the insert and right here and the width of this material. Basically, the insert's going to go in this piece like so, and then of course the bolt's going to go through here into the insert. So I have to decide how deep to drill my holes. So one of the tricks that I use is I just use a piece of tape to give me a depth stop. These bolts, now it all depends on what you buy, but these bolts are 1/4 So I used a 1/4-inch drill bit. I came in 4 inches and in 4 inches on each end here, and I set my depth. I've already taken my piece of tape off, but I put my tape on my drill bit. The tip of the drill bit would go to where the end of the insert would be, and then I put a piece of tape right here, and then I went in and I drilled my holes. And remember, I've just got it clamped together now. I've got a clamp up here. I'm going to take it apart, and then the holes in this section, which is where the insert's going to go, my particular inserts say to use a 9mm bit, so I'm going to do the same thing. I've set my piece of tape for the depth of the insert, and I'm going to take the 1/4-inch hole that I drilled, and I'm going to open it up to 9mm for those inserts. And then, just to be on the safe side, since this is pine, I'm probably going to epoxy them in, put some epoxy around them before I thread them in, but I'll show you that. Move you around here. I'm going to put 2 knockdown screws on this side, I'm going to put 2 on that side, and then I'm going to put 2 up here, but I'm going to bring them in from the top. So I've drilled those holes in. Here's how I do these inserts. You don't have to do this, but I mix up a little bit of just quick set 5-minute epoxy. You don't have to put epoxy on them, but that's what I do. And then they come with a, they got like a hex insert, so it'll fit on your Allen wrench. And then I just dip the tip of it in a little bit of epoxy. I think that just helps it, especially if you're putting it in softwood. And then you get it started. You start the threads. Try to start them as as square as you can with the board, and then take it to where it's flush or maybe just a touch past. It's important though to have the hole drilled to the right diameter and the right depth, because if you don't, it puts too much of a strain on that insert. So I took one of my leftover pieces of 2x4 that I had already planed and cross-cut it to 27 inches because that's the width of my uprights. And then I ripped 3/4 inch wide strips off of it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put, I'll finish cut them to make sure that they exactly match up to the width of the uprights. And then I'm going to sand them to just round over all the corners to make them pretty. And I'll put 2 on each leg like this, just as a little added decoration. And also it gives the arbor a little bit of stability this way, front to back. I took those 1.5 inch by 3/4 strips that I cut, spaced them out basically in thirds. This is 75 inches tall from the top of the foot, 25 and then 50, and then that kind of split this up into thirds to give it a nice visual perspective. I just rounded off all the corners with my sander, and then I used some exterior tight bond, clamped it in place, glued it, braided it, and then it'll be fine for outdoor use. So you could put a whole bunch of them down through here to make it look kind of like a lattice. You could put cross bracing, you could use molding, whatever you wanted to do. That's just up to you to how to decorate it, and a lot of it probably will depend on what you're going to use the arbor for. So what I've done is I've just laid out my 3 pieces now to put them together. I've got my Allen wrench for my knockdown screws, which I've got laying like right there. Got the 2 legs set up, got the top piece set up. All I've got to do is set that top piece up on the leg section. The way I've built the legs, it makes it easy to stand them, for them to stand up, so you don't have to wrestle around with it if you're putting it together, taking it apart by yourself. Put it together like that. Then you make sure that these are lined up like so. Take a couple of the knockdown bolts and just get these started. So there we go. Make sure they're threaded up. I wouldn't tighten them down quite yet. And then you can get these on the side. And again, putting these blocks in here, it also helps you line it up. And generally, once you get those first 2 lined up, it's easy to get these threaded up. So they're fine. Now get these 2. Go around and tighten them all up, and then you can do the other leg, and you put together. There, that leg's on. Now we just got to do the other one. It's ready to stand up. So there you go, works out pretty good. Thanks for watching and hope to see you back soon. God bless you.